So crystals are imperfect, right? So there are different types of defects which are present in a crystal. For example, you could have vacancies, uh, you can have a point, you can have line defects in the form of dislocations, uh, or you can have two-dimensional defects like stacking faults or twins and so on. So there are different types of defects which are present in a crystal, and it is very difficult to find a perfect crystal, okay, in nature. And in many cases we consider these defects as troublemakers. uh, so um, so what I would like to show here is that in certain cases defects will help us, especially if you want to deform a material. um, uh, um, it is always a presence of defects, especially in the form of dislocations, that are helping us in the plastic deformation. So this is what something which I would like to discuss here. Okay, so to start with, um, we can have a perfect crystal. First of all, think of a perfect crystal which is not having any defects. So this is one layer of atom. Okay, so this is one layer of atom, and you can imagine another layer of atom which is sitting on top of the first layer, bottom layer. Okay, and all the atoms are of the same size. Okay, so it's a similar same material, there is no other impurities, all atoms are of the same size, and there are two layers of atom, and the separation distance we can call this as d. So d is the separation distance between the uh, two plane of atoms, and and we can also think about the distance between, or we can give um, or we can tell the distance between the two atoms as x. Okay, so the x represents the distance between the two atoms. So no, instead of x I will put b, because for certain other reasons, but b is b you can consider as the distance between the two atoms in the same plane. Okay, so b is the distance between the two atoms in the same plane, and d is the interplanar, or the spacing between the distance between the two planes. Okay, assume that this crystal is a perfect, this is a perfect crystal without having any defects or impurities or any sort of vacancies or anything like that, and this is subjected to some sort of a stress, and we are considering here shear stress. Okay, so assume that this perfect crystal is subjected to a shear stress tau. Okay, so what is tau here? The tau is nothing but the shear stress which the crystal is subjected to, and because of this shear stress, what happens is that the crystal will actually move uh, over this plane. The first plane, the top plane, will actually move over the bottom plane like this. So it moves over the bottom. I will use another color, maybe like this. So it actually moves over the bottom plane. It climbs up the hill and goes there, and then it falls down. So that is what is going to happen. So it climbs up the hill, goes up, comes here, and then it actually falls down. So this is actually the complete motion of the uh, of the of the plane of atoms, one plane of atom above the other. Okay, so this I can represent in terms of energy. What will be the energy difference or the potential energy? So if I make a plot of the potential energy with respect to distance, and this is my axis, this is something, assume that this is an one-dimensional motion, the moving along the x direction. So what happens is that once you imagine the red plane or red atoms which are sitting on top of the white atoms, and the red atoms has to climb the hill, and then it will actually fall down. Okay, so the potential energy will be going up, up, up reaches a maximum value when it is on the top, and then it actually falls down. Okay, so this is the complete motion, and this distance will be b, right, because it's one atomic distance traveled. The red plane of atoms, or the red atoms, has traveled one atomic distance. So one atomic distance we have taken it as b, so this is the distance which it has traveled. So this is how the potential energy changes with respect to the distance, and here the assumption here is that the atoms are considered as hard spheres, so they are not going to penetrate each other, and they are rigid and hard, and they just simply move on top of the other. Okay, so that is one assumption which is there, which is quite true in which is quite correct in these cases. Okay. Okay, now what I can do is that you can represent this in terms of the force. So instead of representing in terms of potential energy, you can represent in terms of force, or the shear force here. So this is nothing but the differential. So force is nothing but the differential of the potential, right, with respect to the distance. So dou u by dou x. So if you differentiate this, you should get the force, and you can see that the slope is a positive slope, and in fact it has got a profile like this. Okay, so it has got a profile like this, profile similar to that of a sinusoidal motion. Okay, so force with respect to distance. So what you will see is that initially when you have to climb up the hill, you have to give a large amount of force. It comes up to certain point here, and then with relatively less force you can go up the hill, and it can go up to here, and until that point the slope of this potential with respect to distance is positive, right? The slope is positive, and after that the slope is negative, so it is in the negative part, so it comes down, comes down, and it finally comes back to the zero force when it is here, which is actually the stable part. So this is something which happens. So you can, so what you can think is that the motion of this one plane of atom over the other can be approximated as a sinusoidal motion. So this is an approximate motion. It is not true that it is always a sinusoidal motion, but it can be approximated in a very generic sense, that the movement of one plane of atom over the other is sinusoidal in case of a perfect crystal. Okay, and here is the point where you have the maximum force. Okay, and this is the point where the potential and the slope is 0, du by dx is actually 0, so this corresponds to the 0 point. Okay, this is an unstable equilibrium point. Okay, this is an unstable point, and whereas these 2 points corresponds to the stable equilibrium point. Okay, now we can represent instead of a force in terms of shear stress, because shear stress is nothing but force by area, and therefore the shear stress is proportional to force, right? Because A is just a constant factor. So we can always represent stress or force in terms of the stress by dividing it by area. So what I do is that instead of force I can represent in terms of stress also. So I can use, instead of a force, might be stress. Understand that there is a constant factor there, but we are, for time being, we are neglecting it. So the stress can be represented like this, as how the stress varies with respect to distance, and we have seen that the variation is a sinusoidal. So the stress, we can write it as a constant. As of now, you imagine this is the constant, some constant multiplied by sine 2 pi x by b, the total length. Okay, so x is equal to b means it's actually one full complete circle, means one complete movement, Okay, so in that case, x becomes equal to b, so it is sine 2 pi, and then it should be equal to 0. So this is what exactly you get from here, from this expression. So tau is equal to tau 0 into sine 2 pi x by b. Okay, at the limiting conditions you can put it and check that whether it is correct or not. Okay, now what you can do is that you can approximate this as for small displacements. Okay, so you assume that this is a small displacement. Small displacement means, for example, you are taking a material like this and subjecting it to or it is exposed to a force. So what happens is initially there will be a displacement which will be called it as the elastic deformation, and then further beyond even further the force, then what happens is that it changes to a plastic deformation. So now if the displacement is very small, it is within the elastic deformation regime. Okay, so if you have plotted a load displacement plot, okay, it will be something like this. Okay, so the initial part will be linear, especially in case of metals, and after that it will be non-linear. The linear part can be corresponding to the to the to the elastic part, and after that it is a non-linear part corresponding to the plastic deformation. So what we are doing is we are making an assumption that for small displacement, if we consider only a very small displacement, so it is within the elastic regime. That is one thing. So we are considering elastic deformation. In that case, the stress can be approximated as tau 0 2 pi x by b. We are just making a small angle approximation. So what we are doing is that sine theta is considered as, we are making the assumption as sine theta equal to theta at small angles. And this is true, right? What is theta? The theta is nothing but the arc length. So if this is A, B, C, theta is defined as the arc length, which is BC, divided by the hypotenuse or the radius. So in that case it is AC, right? Or whereas the sine theta, what is sine theta? The sine theta is nothing but the, if you drop a perpendicular from here, so this distance, the opposite distance, which is a CD divided by AC, right? That is sine theta. So at small angles, you can approximate BC arc BC as equal to that of the CD, and therefore sine theta becomes equal to that of the theta. So this is a small angle approximation which I am making, and that turns out to be tau 0 into 2 pi x by b. Okay. And now what we can do is I can bring in, so this is within the elastic limit. Okay, so since it is a small deformation, so it is within the elastic limit. Okay, now what I can do is I can write this as stress. We know the Hooke's law, and we can write stress is proportional to strain, and the strain is nothing but the shear strain, or stress is equal to G into strain, which is shear strain. Gamma is nothing but the shear strain, and G is the shear modulus. And what is gamma? Gamma is the shear strain. Okay. And how you define gamma? So the gamma can be defined like this. So for example, a body like this and subjected to a shear stress. So what happens is that it gets deformed like this. So this is the sheared body. I will use some other color. Okay, and the shear stress gamma is nothing but the tan theta. And in this case, in our case, this distance is nothing but the d, and this is the small deformation which is happening, that we take it as x. So what is tan theta? Tan theta is opposite side by adjacent side. It is x by d. So gamma becomes equal to x by d. So what I can do is that I can substitute this tau, which is shear stress, into this expression. So that can be done, and if I rewrite, so this becomes g into x by d, g gamma, okay, equal to tau 0 into 2 pi x by d. And tau 0 is nothing but my maximum stress. Okay, so I will write this as my tau 0. Okay, so this is my maximum stress. Or in this problem, this is nothing but the theoretical stress. So that is what we are going to find it out. So in this case, x and x gets cancelled, and you get tau 0 as g by 2 pi into b by d. So this is what you will get. So you get what is the maximum stress or the theoretical stress in this case is proportional to g by 2 pi, and there is a factor also there, which is b by d. What is b? B is actually the separation distance between the two atoms, and d is the separation distance between the two planes. Now if we take a simple example, for example iron as a material, iron is a material, and the iron is BCC at a body centered cubic at room temperature. Okay, so it is something like this. So the iron, and it has got a body centered cubic crystal structure. Okay, at room temperature, and therefore, if you have studied some crystallography, you will know that this is the direction along the body diagonal is the most closely packed direction in a BCC. Okay, so this is the direction, which we call it as the 111 direction. This is 111 crystallographic direction, and this is the most closely packed direction. And the most closely packed direction means this is the direction in which the atoms are in contact with each other, and therefore this atom is actually touching. I have not shown it clear, but this atom is actually touching the body centered atom, and therefore this is the most closely packed, since it is the most closely packed direction and these two atoms are touching, this is my B. Okay, so this is my B, and if A is my lattice parameter, okay, it's a cube, so A equal to B equal to C, so A, only you need A. And what is B? B is actually the distance between the body centered atom and the corner atom. Okay, so B is nothing but the distance between the body centered and the corner atom, and it is actually along the body diagonal, so it is root 3 A by 2, right? It's half of the body diagonal. B is nothing but root 3 A by 2. And what is D? D is actually the spacing between the two planes, and in this case the D is nothing but A in case of a BCC structure, because A equal to B equal to C for a cubic structure, and therefore this height will be equal to this base length. So D and A are actually the same. So D is equal to A. So now what is B by D here? So the B by D is nothing but root 3 by 2. Okay. So A and A get cancelled, and you get B by D equal to root 3 by 2. So therefore you can substitute into the previous equation, and you get this as GB by 2 pi into root 3 by 2. No, B is not there, sorry. So okay, GB by, so again, okay, G by 2 pi into root 3 by 2. So you can solve this and substitute this. The root 3 is 1.732 and pi is 3.14. You can solve this and you get G as G by 7.25 or something like that. It's again approximate, okay, because we have already made some approximations here. For example, you can see that we have approximated a small displacement and so on. So these are all approximate answers, and you get a relation that is, the maximum stress required for the deformation is proportional to G by 7 is proportional to G, and in fact in this case, in case of iron, it is G by 7.25. And what is G? The G is nothing but the shear modulus. Okay. And for steel, you know the elastic modulus E. Okay, the elastic modulus E is 210 gigapascal. And you can have a relationship, and we think that we assume that the material is isotropic, and in case of isotropic material, E is equal to 2G into 1 plus nu, which we know, right? And therefore you can find out G from this expression, and where 2 into G into 1 plus nu is nothing but the Poisson's ratio, and we assume this as 0.3. Nu is the Poisson's ratio. 0.3, so you get something as G as 210 divided by 2 into 1.3, so which we have to solve it, which I will do it. 210 divided by 2.6, it is coming around 80.77 gigapascal. Okay, so this is the G, the shear modulus. So now if we substitute it into this expression, so the theoretical shear strength, or the maximum shear strength in this case, is nothing but 80.77 giga by 7.25, which will be around 11 gigapascal. Okay, so it is coming around 11 gigapascal. So, so this is the theoretical strength which we have derived from some assumptions. We have made some assumptions, so it may not be truly accurate, but we got a value which is something close to 7 or 12 gigapascals. But in actual cases, if you do a tensile test like this, and for example, I've shown here a tensile test like this, and measure the strength, the actual strength of the material, and the strength will be of the order of 700 megapascal or less than that. Okay, it depends upon the what type of steel you are doing. I have taken here actually actually iron. The steel is slightly different. Steel is an alloy of iron and carbon, so there could be again some changes and so on. But if you neglect all the changes and assume that it's a mild steel with very less carbon content and so on, we can compare the corresponding strength of a iron with that of a steel. The steel is definitely stronger, but still a stronger material like steel is having a strength of only 700 megapascal, or depending upon the steel it may vary, but typically it will have around 700 to 1 gigapascal. So but the theoretical shear strength is around 11 gigapascal, which is much higher, if you compare with theoretical strength, shear strength, which we got it as around 12 gigapascal. So this is much higher than this one, right? So which means that that if the crystal was perfect, you need this much amount of or the strength of the material is very high, so you need a very high amount of energy to actually make the deformation happening. So right, so this is what it implies. So if your material is very since the strength is very high, you have to put a large amount of energy to deform the material. But luckily for us, the strength of the material, the actual strength is around 700 megapascal, which is significantly lower than that of the theoretical shear strength. The amount of energy which we have to put to deform the material is substantially lower. So this is why this happens, why the actual case is so much different from that of the theoretical case, and the reasons lies in the presence of defects. So the presence of defects weaken the crystal. So if you make a crystal which is highly pure, so where there are no impurities present, or where there are no defects present in the crystal, you can have a strength closer and closer to that of a theoretical shear strength. But in real cases, because of the processing techniques which we do and so on, and because of several other reasons, there will be always defects present in the crystal, and the presence of the defects actually reduces the strength or weakens the crystal. And this is quite useful for the industry perspective, because it actually brings down the energy required for plastic deformation. Otherwise, you need, if you want to deform a steel, you have to put a large amount of, actually 10 times here or more energy you have to put to actually deform the material. So the defects in defects, though may be problem, though create problems in certain cases, there are situations like this where the defects also could be useful. Okay.